Hello, hello. Monday is SeedFunders Day. We had a great 2-hour meeting. Usually the first hour of the meeting we have one of our companies, or potential investments come in and pitch. Because several of the partners in SeedFunders are also partners in St Petersburg Group, including 3 of the board members of the 5. And because St Petersburg Group does work with some of the companies that we invest in, we thought it would be prudent for me to present the St Petersburg Group to the partners of SeedFunders, just so everybody had their head around who we were and what we're trying to do in the community. And it's not often, I usually don't try to explain everything the St Petersburg Group does, because it's pretty much pointless. Every time I do, all people say is, holy hell, you've got a lot going on, and some variation of that, and the actual substance of what we're doing always takes us a backseat to the overwhelm of trying to understand it all in one go, and or just that it's a lot. And so with this environment, though, I had an hour, I had slides, and I had an intelligent audience. So I did that, and they said, "Wow, you've got a lot going on." No, but they did say that a little bit. But it was a good meeting, and the big thing is, as we evolve, the St. Petersburg Group is always good to check in with what we've accomplished and what our goals are and were, and just to understand if we're on the right path or not. And even though we do consulting work for the groups connected to SeedFunders, the companies, really the bulk of St. Petersburg Group is our media network and our connectivity, sort of trying to be the nervous system of St. Petersburg. And that's what we talked about a bunch, and people got it, and there's some good feedback. So it was good, and I think everybody feels good about SPG. The big thing is with SeedFunders, because we're so early, it's just natural for the types of people who come in to become partners and invest in early stage startups are people who want to be involved, who want to get in the mud with the companies, and they enjoy that process. And so we're looking at how we can evolve our investment thesis to match that, and that could be that part of our investment includes services or personnel or whatever. And so then it starts to straddle what the later stage private equity firms do, where they'll put an investment in but also embed their people in the company at the C level. Just keep an eye on their investment and add that acumen and all that good stuff. And pretty much I'd say 75% of the startups that we get in would welcome that. They're always struggling for people and acumen. Everybody needs a CFO. Everybody's got a good technology developer but maybe not an architect, or they have a good architect but not a developer. Marketing is sometimes completely vacant or sometimes really good, but either way, no startup, just sort of by definition being a startup, because usually 1 or 2 people are coming in with a full suite of skills and the time to, even if they had the skills, the time to use it if they're trying to build their company. So I think it's a natural way for SeedFunders to exist, but we've got to articulate it in a way that makes sense to everyone. That includes plenty of transparency when it comes to the work, being attached to the investments, and so we started down that path by presenting SPG, and of course SPG wouldn't be the only one that would do the work. It would be I won't say a bidding process, but some variation of that, where we'd source the work at the best value, and everybody would compete for it. But getting people on board with even that thinking to include the work in the investment is at least starting that conversation was good. And then went to St. Pete College. One thing I haven't mentioned before, we went down the road with a thing called Catalyst Innovation Labs, which is sort of all the stuff we're talking about with helping startups. It would be a physical space to do that in, and it's, as everything we do is, it's sort of like an incubator, but quite different. And I'm not gonna bore you with all of the all the details of it, but other than to say it's a very compacted incubator, not like one where you just have a bunch of classes that run through, or cohorts that run through, I should say. It's one where we would have a permanent staff of C-levels or skilled people. So we'd have a CFO on staff, and that CFO would act as the fractional CFO for our small group of companies, and the companies wouldn't come and go through like a 12-week course. They would come and stay until they're ready to move by their own, propulsion into a new state, whether they sell or grow big enough that they can get a bigger investment and they can hire in the full staff and move to their own space. But the philosophy behind it is that we really need wins here, and by concentrating firepower on a few of our very best prospects as startups, we can give those ones a chance to become our flagships, the companies that the ecosystem grows around. And we can only do that because we already have a good slate of people doing incubators in the traditional cohort style. So that's something that we were going to go into Christ United Methodist Church. They have about 20-some thousand square feet of unused space. They actually, not people know this, but they actually have almost a Palladium-sized event venue. This is on First Avenue North, between 4th and 5th Street. It's an old kind of cream-colored church, but the left side of it is actually an 800 to 1,000 person chapel. But you could do a show with basically the same size and experience you would have at the Palladium. And so part of our model with that there was, and there was a smaller event space even as well, was just to add in events. And so we had a cool business model. The funding was the problem. They were supposed to sell a parking lot to help pay for the funding. To this day, 2 years later, I don't think they've sold that parking lot. And so we just couldn't get together on that. Church needs, it's beautiful, but it needs a ton of updating. And so, and way more than any tenant would ever be expected to put in. So then we moved on and looked at buying our own place. And with the prices of everything right now, we decided that was not a great option. So we ended up moving into Tampa Bay Innovation Center, which is where we are now, which has been fantastic. But, the St. Pete College has 2 or 3 floors in that building downtown where American Stage is and SPC, that they're in the process of turning into something. And so we wanted to throw our hat in the ring to potentially open up this Catalyst Innovation Labs there. So we met with the provost and Jackie, who is Dr. Tanja Williams' kind of right hand. And I've talked to Dr. Williams about it multiple times. So it's a slow process, and they've got some other options that they're looking at as well. But that could be a cool thing. And then David Downing came in. We talked for about 2 hours. David Downing is formerly the head of Visit St. Pete Clearwater. Now he's working for a development company that does big installations, like big buildings like One in downtown, that type of thing. And he's helping them with their marketing and branding, in addition to some of his own stuff. He's been working with ACT a little bit. Alex Harris, who we all know and love, and he mentioned that they're going to do a student show on December 15th, and asked me to help spread the word for that. But David and I have been talking about an event for St. Pete for a number of years now, and so we were sort of checking in to see if we're in a position where we could start to move that large event idea forward. And the answer is, yeah, I think we're close. But obviously I mentioned doing the raise for the Catalyst, and that's going to take priority for the next month or two. But the event we could look at starting in 2020. I haven't also mentioned we're working on a quarterly print arts magazine that's mainly driven by Paul Carter and David Meeks. And he said he was familiar with the project, and he threw at me that instead of doing just straight arts, we should make it more of like a Vanity Fair for St. Pete, which I thought was an amazing idea, because there's no good reason not to. You can still chock it full of arts, and anybody who would appreciate the art the Vanity Fair style writing and content, I think, complements art. And I don't think anybody's really done that at the highest end levels for St. Pete. I think it adds, the model for me to get involved in the art magazine. It was critical for me that, and we haven't got this far. I've got some preliminary conversations around it, but that the Vinoy, the Don Cesar, and even like the trade winds would be willing to put the magazine in their rooms, because that's where you unlock a lot of value for the advertisers who ultimately pay for it. And assuming we do that, then really it's just tapping into some of the content and the advertisers we already have a relationship with, who already get it running, starting and doing the arts magazine. But to unlock it, and really I think it's a good chance to do some long form pieces, and some weird stuff, and make it the art plus this additional content, and do a Vanity Fair style magazine. And David, he's interested, and if anybody's seen Visit St. Pete Clearwater stuff, it's beautiful. It's some of the best produced. It's just, he's got the eye for that thing. He's been doing it for years. He used to work for Floaters, run a bunch of stuff for Floaters, travel, and so making things beautiful is what he does. And that he would lend his eyes and brain to something like this would also be a great move in the right direction. So yeah, we hadn't caught up in a while. I saw him at the downtown partnership lunch, but we only talked for 5 or 10 minutes there, so to get a couple hours of one-on-one time was a treat. And that finished my day, except getting yelled at by Bridget Bello for not having my article in for Tampa Bay Business Wealth, which is what I'm going to do right now. So thanks for listening along, and more tomorrow. Bye.